everyone. My name is Spirit River Strythwolf. I'm president for the Student Association of Mount Royal University's Representation Executive Council. REC, also what it's called, represents students to help them succeed in a variety of different areas. We represent and advocate for students internal to MRU, to committees, decision makers, councils, and different departments. We also represent students at the external portfolio to local, provincial, and federal government and government leaders, as well as to the public and to the media. So today, in the kind of the guise of trying to bring more transparency to the work that we've been doing for you, I have a few highlights here to share with you and kind of catch you up to speed with some of the advocacy work that me and my team has been doing. So I hope you folks find this interesting, and if you have any questions, you can send me an email at president@samru.ca. So the first thing that we have here is campus COVID safety measures and food courts. So at a GFC meeting, and GFC is the General Faculty Council's meeting, which is the highest academic decision-making body at MRU, I gave the opinion that institutions should consider showing proof that the safety measures are helping the campus community be safe. Faculty and students continue to be concerned about their safety, and this might be a great way of alleviating those concerns around safety. As well, around food courts specifically, we met with the Deputy Minister of Advanced Education, myself and Vice President Timmermans, and we advocated to the Deputy Minister to consider the need for food courts in universities to be included in the health order regarding post-secondary institutions, similar to how we have that for cafeterias. And that's really important because you've probably come into Wickham House and you've probably seen no chairs or nowhere to sit. And that's because we're not considered in the post-secondary institutional health order for us. Moving on, we have things around Indigenous representation. And this is something obviously very important to me as the first Indigenous president for the Student Association. One thing that was really important to me was to introduce Indigenous representation for the representatives even when I'm gone, so that representation can remain. And so we've introduced something called the Indigenous Ambassadors. And so we have the SAMRU Student Ambassador for Internal Affairs and the SAMRU Student Ambassador for External Affairs. And so the Internal Indigenous Ambassador works with the Vice President Student Affairs, Joseph Nguyen, and they essentially talk to, the Iniscum Center we have here. We also have the Associate Vice President of Indigenization and Decolonization. So that internal ambassador, along with VP Nguyen, or the Vice President of Student Affairs, they will advocate for Indigenous issues in those areas on campus. And the Indigenous External Affairs Ambassador will work with Vice President Rachel Timmermans, also known as the VP External, to work with her in regards to advocacy to local, provincial, and federal governments. And that's especially important for federal governments because a lot of Indigenous policy is kind of coordinated and made at the federal level. So I'm sure that our internal Indigenous ambassador our external Indigenous ambassador will be doing a lot of work with the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations and the Indigenous representation we have there. Along with Indigenous representation, one of the goals that I had this year was to really explore Indigenous financial insecurity. When we had our membership check-in during the thick of the pandemic, kind of late 2020, one thing that we discovered was that Indigenous students and the rest of campus, that there is a gap that exists in terms of financial security, that Indigenous students tend to struggle more for it, significantly more than the rest of campus. And so that was something that I really want to explore and find out what that might be all about. And so I sent out a call for Indigenous focus group participants through the MRU Iniscum Center. And I'm just really grateful for all the help that they've been able to support in that area. Another thing in other news, I suppose, is the winter break and why we advocated for this. At the General Faculties Council, Vice President Yasmin Ahmed and myself voted in favor of extending the withdrawal date for the fall 2021 semester. That was really important because that was something that REC advocated for along with the university, or at least we were in conversations with them last winter break. Because of the big transition we made to in-person to online delivery, we felt that the winter break extension would be helpful. And so this year, because we've made another large transition from online back to in-person, we felt that having an extended winter break and as well as the withdrawal deadline would be something that would be really helpful for students. So yeah, a larger winter break and the withdrawal deadline for the fall 2021 semester has been extended. On to MRU budget news. On November 1st, 2021, I met with Evan Cortons, Director of Institutional Research and Planning, as well as Carrie-Ann Smith, Interim Director of Resource Planning and Client Services, and Carlos Arenas, Director of Financial Services, and these are folks in MRU. And I advocated to them and told them that students should be able to easily access and understand financial information about the university or institution and how it impacts them as students. This was something that was really clearly made clear to me during the election period this year when I was elected, that students, were concerned about tuition increases, but we also want to know that the money that we're pulling from students from tuition is being spent properly. And so that is when we're kind of working on a big project with the financial services folks to make sure that we can provide you with information, maybe in infographics or videos, to help you clearly understand how your tuition dollars are being spent appropriately. On to tuition fee consultation and the $1 million bursary fund. In this section, Rachel, the Vice President of External, is your representative, along with Vice President Yasmin Ahmed, on the Tuition and Fees Consultation Committee. Rachel and Yasmin are essentially your voice to the institution when we're consulting about tuition and fees. At that meeting, Rachel asked about how many students received the low-income bursary that comes out of revenue from domestic tuition. And so this is really important. $1 million of revenue from domestic tuition, it essentially took the tuition dollars that was made from the increase of the 7% that students are aware of, and it directed them to low income bursaries. And yeah, it's one of the highest amount given to bursaries of any institution in Alberta. So we're really happy to have that. We're one of the only institutions that are doing that with the tuition increases, and that came from direct representational and advocacy work from your SAMRU REC. We learned that 950 students received the grant, and that 50 students received an emergency bursary from this fund as well. So I'm really happy to hear that the institution is using our money appropriately. And to our last item here, external advocacy work. So that's kind of government and public and media and things like that. So one thing that I was really happy about was that Rachel and I were able to meet with Dawn Farrell, and she's the MRU Chancellor. And we did this mostly to relationship build and to share information about SAMRU, our history, and things like that. The Chancellor is new to her role, and she has made it really clear that she cares about her role and wants to ensure that she understands the issues from all corners of the university. And so it was really important for her to come and meet with Rachel and I and to do a tour of SAMRU and show her the different ways that we represent and serve students to help them succeed. In other news around external work, Rachel Timmermans, with other stakeholders of the post-secondary system, were invited to participate in a bill briefing on changes to the Post-Secondary Learning Act. And the Post-Secondary Learning Act is the legislation that governs not only Mount Royal as an undergraduate university, but also the Students' Association as well. And so anytime the Post-Secondary Learning Act is open, we're always keeping a really clear eye on and trying to make sure that we're aware of all the things that are going up. Another news, Rachel and I also met with Alberta Senator Scott Tanis, and we talked about Indigenous learners and maintaining the Canada Student Grant. SAMRU made the connection with his interest in Indigenous issues and the Canadian Alliance of Student Association's priority of Indigenous learners, because he does care a lot about Indigenous reconciliation. And we also talked about the Canada Student Grant, that CASA is wanting to maintain the $6,000 maximum for federal grants after the 22-23 school year. We said that his support would be instrumental in building bipartisan support from both chambers of Parliament. And so that's really all we have here for our little news segment here. Thank you for joining me here today. And yeah, I hope you folks enjoy the rest of your semester.